I am really excited for the next 3 weeks. We are going to be focusing on our sexual relationship, which was such a game changer with the connection codes in my own life. And leading into Valentine's, we just really wanted to have a few episodes where we focus on this. We had a email come in recently of someone asking, what role does emotions play in sex? I've turned the emotional side of my brain off because my partner doesn't care about emotions anymore. And so what do I do to connect with him? And that's where we're going to be going today, is the emotional connection in sex. So that is what we talk about here. Welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. This is the podcast where we break open our emotions that take us from being disconnected to connected in our relationships and in ourselves. I'm your host, Tara Wages, and joining me is marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis Hill. And together, they have founded the Connection Codes, which is the guide to human connection. And we're so glad you're here.
Yes. Hello, world.
Hi, friends. Anytime we talk about sex, and we do have a masterclass about that topic as well, and it's been really encouraging. Recently, we are working with a new couple from a different country, and he was so positive. He was like, I have never heard anybody that is from the Christian sector talk about sex the way you guys do. And he said, I have been looking for many years to see what's out there. And he said, this is just so encouraging. And I'm thankful for that. But what's interesting for us is that we always say, do the foundations first before you do late night, because it is all about emotion. But for many people, they don't connect the two. So we get that. Like the person who wrote this email, you're not alone. Yeah. Most people do not understand how to connect the two. And part of our story, which we've shared on other episodes of our podcast, is very much about our beginning and the pain that was created so quickly around sex. And we thought, okay, we just need to get better at this. Right. And very much thought it was all about the logistics that no one taught us. I felt a lot of anger at that point of just, this could have been avoided if we'd have just had people willing to talk to us. Like we just didn't know. And what we didn't know caused a lot of damage. But many years later, as we got ourselves going very well in that area, we began being asked to teach and talk and that kind of thing. We would even do seminars. But after years of that, and that was pretty much when you went back to school and then went all the way and got your doctorate in sexology, it was that realization that there's something big missing in all of this. And that's where the emotion piece came in. And just recently we had the honor of talking to a group of therapists that are here in town, and they invited us, which somehow I missed the whole memo on this, that because he's a sexologist, they invited us. So this group of therapists thought we were coming in to just talk about sex. That's the part of the memo I missed. And so of course we get in knowing we're not going to just walk through the door talking about sex, because if you don't have the emotion piece, you're missing so much, which we believe causes just more damage.
Right.
And so we actually said, okay, now we've done this whole emotion piece. Now you're going to now bring us back, and we'll gladly talk about the sex piece.
Right.
But we got to start with the emotion.
Yeah. And the reason that matters so much, and again, we didn't get this for the majority of our marriage. It was decades. Yeah. And somewhere along the way, we got the idea that we have to figure out this sex stuff. And understand, this is a couple, Phyllis and Glenn, we didn't even know. Number one, we didn't know where Phyllis's clitoris was. Number two, we didn't think she had one, or vice versa. I don't know which one's one and number two.
Because of the lack of education that y'all experienced.
Yes, there's no question that information does matter. I'm not saying that it doesn't matter. But as we got information, and I'm not saying that you can't have sexual activity. I'm not saying that wouldn't be fun, pleasurable, etc. But it will not be sexually connecting. And there's a difference between being sexually involved and being sexually connected.
Even one other piece of all of that, we were a part of a conference this year, and I think it was 7,000 therapists. One of the classes I went to was about vaginismus, and these are experts. They're in their 80s, or at least right at 80, and have done this forever, all this research, all this work, and they stated vaginismus is connected to emotion. So even more and more research is coming out that is just addressing that some of the struggles we're having are because we don't understand how emotion is connected to our sexual activity. And I think it is a very big topic. And that is why I think we've gotten super passionate about helping people understand the emotional side and how now we say you've got to have dynamic emotional connection to have dynamic sexual connection. And that piece is really mind-blowing for a lot of people because they really think it's just mechanics. And the times that we've talked on the podcast, I know one of the popular ones that gets brought up a lot is the one where you talked about the pressure. And it's okay. If you are listening, even right this minute, and you're like, ooh, I feel so much pressure around sex. So how are you communicating that? How are you able to say that to your spouse without causing an explosion of anger or emotion? And there may be listeners who go, oh, yeah, that's what we fight about the most. And I don't want to fight. Yeah, I pay attention to the calendar. And if it's been more than X amount of days, then I make sure we have some kind of sexual activity. But there's no language. There's no communication that really changes that. And I know that's you and Wes have been really open about that. Yeah. And so to help us as now in this moment and the listeners understand how this language, this ability to communicate has changed things for you and Wes.
Totally. So for us, I would say going into the connection codes, like we were friends and I would say that we weren't disconnected. It's a good way to say it, but our sex life was very it's a task, it's a checklist, it's something I need to do, I have to do. And I would say a lot of the emotional disconnection was not even between he and I, it was between me and me. I was experiencing so many emotions from becoming a mom, from not having identity as myself, and shame in sex and fear. I've talked a lot about we did our own podcast before the connection codes, and we have an episode where it's like the 5 top fears of sex or something, even like the fear of the noises that sex made. There were just like all of these emotions that I had about sex, and that's what was interfering with our sex life. And so for me, that's why emotions play such a big role, because it can be between you and your partner. If you and your partner are living in tension and conflict and disconnection, that's not a safe place to go and be intimate with each other. But if you're living in disconnection with yourself, if you are experiencing so much fear and pain and shame, then that's not going to be connecting either.
And I just love that. That's a perfect example, what Phyllis is talking about, that the episode we did on feeling pressure to be involved sexually. We could say logistically, Tier, you just have to do the thing.
I did for a long time.
And most women end up disassociating. Because that's all they can do. Because they're not being present. They're not being authentic. They're not being their vulnerable self because they've been told or somehow got the message they're not supposed to be, not allowed to be. And so that's a terrible setup. That now, because I would suggest, and I don't want to be too dramatic, but now she just becomes pretty close to a prostitute, pretty close to just a thing. That she's just available for this, which is such a horrific setup.
Which I do want to clarify with that Wes was never.
No. Yeah, I'm not talking about Wes.
That was never his.
Absolutely.
That was 100% me. This is a checkbox. Right. And it was so painful for him. So much pain for him because he felt unwanted, undesired, uncared for from the person that he loved most. And not at all what he thought he was getting himself into when he got married. And I felt, I'm a great wife. If you had asked me, we're having sex 2 to 3 times a week. I am crushing this wife thing. And so we were completely on different pages of what was even happening, but it was just an act that I was doing, and he could feel every second of
and
that.
I don't think I've ever sat with a man who wants that.
Yeah.
And again, I get it. Some part of it's biochemical. He's horny, but he doesn't really want her just to be used. I don't think I've ever sat with a man that wants that. He just doesn't know what to do about it.
Yeah. And in that very moment, that second of release, it may be that flooded the dopamine rush. But when that's gone, it's like it almost feels dirty.
Yeah.
Because you're going, this is my partner for life, and it doesn't feel that there's any kind of emotional connection through this. And it's interesting because the person that wrote in said, oh man, things were great when we first got married.
Yeah.
And now after 6 years, it's just, and you go, that I believe that is the part of not having the emotional connection, the emotional piece to it. And sometimes you go, okay, for us, let's just talk about where does the performance come from? A lot of us, in a way, we're taught that is all that it is about. And I definitely grew up in an era where the verbiage even, it's your wifely duty. Like, it's what?
Well,
It's your wifely duty? Like that, where did that terminology even come up? Who started that? And which goes back to the checklist, the performance, just I feel good about myself because I take care of my man at least twice a week. But it was never meant to be that.
Totally.
It was never meant to be that.
yeah, and I would want to say that as far as the late night masterclass, which is all about sexuality, a lot of people, probably more females than males, but they think that what we're going to do is say, okay, this is what you have to do, or this is how you, again, whatever, perform your wifely duty better or something. And I just want you to know, I don't know if it's the opposite, but our positioning is almost the antithesis of that that's not our point at all.
Yeah.
One of the very first protocols we cover in late night is that sex is designed as a party for the female. So it's not our goal just to say, okay, woman, you got to show up more frequently and do the thing.
Totally.
Not at all.
Yeah, and something that I want to point out, so the struggle with the email that was sent in that she was experiencing is she has reached a point now where she realizes, okay, our sex life is struggling because we don't have an emotional connection. But my husband, he's more rigid. He was like a corrections. He did a type of job where you had to shut down your emotion. We talk about military families and that police officers, those jobs, EMTs, where you have to shut your emotion down to perform your job. And now you want to come home and, discover what emotion you feel. That's a really difficult transition if you don't have the tools to do that. And so he has shut his emotions down, and she doesn't know how to get him on board with the emotional connection with her so they can get back to having that incredible sexual connection. And so that's where what she's trying to figure out. What does she do? You want sex from me. I want emotions from you. How do we get on a common ground with each other?
Yeah. Again, for us, we just say, go through the Foundations Masterclass together. There are people, I was actually sitting with a couple yesterday, and he's a first responder, and he said, I'm trained not to be a connection coder. I'm trained not to be human. I'm trained not to be authentic. And there's some vocations, that's true. I was sitting with a emergency room doctor recently, and he says literally, and whatever, there's a big car wreck pileup, so he is attending to this individual who dies on the table. What he wants to do is sit there for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, mourn with the family. No, you literally turn around and there's another table a few feet from you, and he has to, it's very non-human. So he has so much to process by the end of a shift like that, where he is so flooded and he has been a, whatever you want to call it, a cyborg, a machine, a robot for the last 6 hours. And his vocation forces him to do that, which is overwhelming. So all the more reason that he very desperately needs to process this as quickly as he can, because he's been forced for 6 hours to not be human, to not process it.
So one of the things that I think about, I picture how to approach those conversations for her to approach her partner and saying, we often say, share your joy with them. I think that's a great connector of, I feel so much joy thinking back to our sex life early on. She was really bragging on it in the email. I was like real proud and happy, had a lot of joy for her. Just like, you taught me so much sexually, and I love our sexual connection. And now I would like to do, what should she say next? Like, I would have joy if you would do this course with me.
But also the third phrase for her to say, I think I'm missing something as far as our sexual connection. And I want to be the best possible lover for us. And I want us to have the most dynamic sexual connection that we can have. Could you help me get this as far as what I'm missing, maybe what we're missing in this? That's a pretty amazing sell. I don't know a lot of people that'd be like, nope, not interested. I don't want us to be better. And again, in reality, and I didn't read the email, I don't know who this is, but if that's his positioning, there's a bigger issue here. If he has zero interest in this coupleship, then we got big problems. So my guess would be that he was very much interested in that. But you can't sell to someone to say, you need to do this because you're whacked out, or messed up, or however you frame it. There's virtually nobody on the planet you can sell that to.
Right.
But to say to somebody, I need your help with us being the best possible version of ourselves, I'm sure that I'm missing some things with you, and I need your help to get better at this.
I also think about the reverse of it, because often I know in our relationship, it was Wes coming to me, wanting more from me sexually, or she's wanting more emotionally from her husband. And so if you find yourselves in the shoes where you're wanting more sexually, that's that question for your partner of, what am I missing? What is it that you need that I can step in and serve? Because it may be surprising to you. It may be, I'm needing more of an emotional connection from you. Or it may be something logistical. I'm needing more time to myself to get warmed up, to get in, to switch from mom mode into love. And so asking your partner that question from a curious standpoint of, I have so much joy being with you. What am I missing to take us to the next level?
Yeah.
We get a lot of correspondence, which we love. So we hear lots of stories, and it's not uncommon for someone to find the connection codes and then their spouse is not interested. And we know now, seeing just so many people that say, and we know that if you learn this material, if you start making these changes for you, your spouse, your partner will notice. And they will, it's like you becoming emotionally in tune with yourself and you becoming emotionally healthy. It's almost like it bleeds over into everyone around you.
Yeah.
And they don't have to know all that you know. They don't have to read the book, do the course. They get the benefit of you being emotionally in tune with yourself, being emotionally healthy, using even the terminology. Like, I would feel so much joy if we could do this together. And if I remember correctly, part of the email too was, it's almost like they're going through a different season where now they're questioning a God part, like what is right, what is wrong.
Yeah, I was going to save that for another podcast.
Oh, you were?
Yeah, a part 2.
That's fine. We don't have to dive into that, but I just think also there's times we go through different seasons.
Yeah.
And sometimes when the season changes, that is where you also need to be able to come to the table and be able to ask, what's happening with that?
Yeah.
And sometimes there just often is more under the surface. There's something stirring. There's times when you can even get into a rut in your sex life where it's, wow, this no longer feels fulfilling, or this no longer feels fun like it used to. And it's interesting because I think in other parts of our lives, we get there. And I'm not saying this is a different season, but Glenn and I have a membership to, it's called AMC something, where we could go to the movies 3 times a week. And I would say now,
it's $19 a month.
Right. And I would say now we really push to go once a month. Come on, babe, we got to get to the movies this month.
So it'd be cheaper if we.
No, let's not go there. Let's not. We're keeping our membership. We're keeping our membership.
We're just supporting a local business.
Yes,
that's what
we're supporting the movie theater. But it's just right now we're just happen to be in a different season. And yeah, we do go through seasons, and to be able to even acknowledge that and to go, okay, what's happening with this season? What adjustment can we make? Is that worth making an adjustment for? Like for us, do we really value going to the movies that much, or does it just feel really fun to be at home and watch a movie together versus go out? Like, it's funny in that going out used to be like, yes, let's jump in the car and go. And now it's more, let's get a blanket and stay. And I don't know if that season is a short season or a long season of that, but being willing to talk about these topics. Yeah. And I think that with your sex life, often there's a lot of fear. Like, a lot of couples don't know how to talk about it. Yeah. They fight about it, but they don't know how to talk about it. And I do love, and I know with this specific person that wrote in, their spouse may not be willing to do the core motion wheel around sexuality. But I always say, you could sit down and say, can I do this with you? Not as in, I want you to do it, but can I do it? Can I tell you what's happening for me? And then you get the wheel and you say, I feel, and then you go through each 8 emotion about your sexual relationship. Even if he doesn't know how to ooh you, he doesn't even want to do it. He's, I'm not doing this. It's okay, but would you allow me to do it? So he can hear your emotion around it. And a lot of what happens with that is your own body's response. It's, I am letting this out. I'm not going to store it. And the person that this affects the most is my partner. And so I want him to know, or her to know, what is happening for me, even if they're not able to do it. That it's a powerful thing to do.
And I can't help but, and I don't know if these episodes are in order, but so I don't know if it's the last episode talking about slicing it thinner. But if your partner says, I can't do that with you, I don't want to do that, so they can't handle the big piece. So to literally say to them, so what happens for you around the idea of doing the wheel with me? And they say what they say. And then it's just another version of the second phrase. You go, so what do you think would happen if we did do it together? I feel like I might be missing that part. What do you think might happen if we did? And again, you're just curious. You're just inviting the person into their own experience. And they can end up almost doing the wheel in the process of not doing the wheel. And that you get to the core for them.
I do have pain thinking about the people who will do that and will just continually be shut down. And so I just want people to know that we've had, I don't know if I can say this. I'm not going to say it. Tara, edit this out. There have been times where we've had couples either come in for sessions or email in, and they want us to flip a button and change their partner. And we don't get that magic button. I think I even said to somebody, I wish I had a button that I could change them. Ultimately, this is a 2-partner situation. And for us to change our sex life, Wes and I, if I hadn't decided to change myself, we would still be back where we were. And it takes 2 people to be willing to show up. And so I want to process the pain that I have for people that are beginning this journey and they're realizing, okay, I've created safety in my home. I've sliced it thinner, like I'm doing the things, and I'm just met with resistance every single time. And I just want to say to them, don't give up on yourself. There's a reason at the end of this podcast, we say, you need this, you deserve this, let's do this. We're talking about you. And so for you to continue to process this alone with yourself, with your best friend, with a safe person, don't give up on this process because your partner has not gotten ready yet. And I don't know if they will. I don't know when they will. We can't make a guarantee. But I just don't want you to feel like you're a failure or that you're not worthy of processing your own emotion because you're met with resistance.
Often I think that emotions have gotten a bad rap.
Mm-hmm.
So even in the terminology, what your partner may be resisting is what he or she defines as emotion.
Yeah.
And they may be defining emotion as outbursts of anger or crying fits, or like they may not realize that actually there's a science behind it.
Right.
That, and I know for me, I mean, that's my story. Like I saw emotions as Glenn's got enough for both of us.
Yeah.
I don't do emotions. And I didn't understand the science. I didn't understand until my body stopped functioning that there's a science behind that. So by opting out, I was storing it all.
Yeah.
Because you can't opt out. Your body fires emotion. And so your brain fires emotion. So it was for me this scientific moment of, oh, wait a minute. I have misunderstood emotions because what I was married to someone who just the terms like, oh, he's so emotional. And in my way of thinking, that keeps you from being productive.
Yeah.
And what people value is productivity. What I value is productivity. What I was raised to believe is productivity is king. And so my worth comes from my productivity, and you can't mix emotions into that. You can't get stuff done. And it's like emotions got a bad rap.
Yeah.
And so
Totally.
for me to understand the science changed everything for me, but I had to face it during a crisis. It's when I no longer could opt out.
Yeah.
I could no longer ignore. I could no longer just stay productive. All of a sudden, my productivity plummeted because I was no longer capable of ignoring. And many of the story was when my mom was dying and I didn't have time to be sad.
Yeah.
And at the same time, my business had exploded that first quarter of that year, which is a huge joy for a business owner, but a ton of fear of failure, of all the things that happen when business explodes so quickly. And I no longer could ignore all that.
Right.
And so I am one of those who did not understand emotion, didn't understand the science. I just thought emotion equals being a total emotional wreck all the time. Yeah. And that may be the resistance. If someone's getting resistance from their partner, it may be that they don't understand really the science of emotion.
Totally.
And it is an interesting thing. I do know I've had many friends over the years who do not believe that what you eat affects your body, on and on the list goes. And people like that, they very much are in a camp. I don't want to go down the list because I may offend some people, because some of our listeners may be in that camp. But it's, for me back in the day, it was like, you think if you go down this road, those are just quacks, and all of that is just a scam. And so it's like when you have people in your life that are like that, it just may not be the season where they can hear anything different. And you can still love them. You can still be curious even about what happens for them, to even consider. I had a dear friend who definitely was that resistant of everything, what I call natural. She resisted it all until her life completely fell apart in a huge way. And she went into a very dark place. And now she's very open to hearing and learning and talking. She understands the body keeps the score. And it's just, wow, I'm so thankful I didn't give up on that friendship, because in that early season, it was just like, we're not going to talk about that. We can talk about other things like travel. We both love to travel. But now we're in a different place and we can actually do the core motion wheel together. And it always blows my mind that is where our friendship has now gotten to. But there may just be a season where there's too much in it. There's too much like resistance to it. And sometimes it takes something in life that will shift it, where you're able to then hear, and you're open to hearing it and you're wanting to learn it. And then you can start to connect the dots. Right. But I know it's hard for the other. It's hard for the partner who's ready to learn all this, understand all this, use these tools. I do want to go back to the topic at hand as far as what does emotion have to do with sex? Because for many of us, it's just, you're just doing it, just do it kind of thing. And what I love, because we fought for so long about it. For me, what I love is to be able to just say, I feel sexual joy about tonight. And it's such an open door. Or I feel a lot of sexual loneliness. We've really been missing each other lately. That doesn't turn into a fight. That turns into, ooh, what's happening with that loneliness? And what do you need? And then it's, I need some time with you. And I'm like, okay, let's get the calendar out. Let's be proactive here. But we didn't have a big fight.
Yeah.
And I think with a lot of couples, they miss each other because they don't even know how to approach each other sexually. It's like the hint, it's the look, it's the touch. And that so much, it's like, that comes with all of that. It's the unspoken words so often that you're talking about. You felt pressure, and a lot of it was about yourself. You felt shame. It's not that Wes ever communicated that. It was all within yourself, but you didn't have the language to even tell him that. You didn't know how to show up in this space and go, hey, bud, I feel a lot of shame about XYZ or whatever.
Yeah.
Like you didn't have that language.
And I feel a lot of sadness because I am freaking tired.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of babies. And he made me a video once. He's, you haven't slept in 10 years. And I'm like, thank you for acknowledging that. I'm a tired person. And that's sadness. I remember Glenn putting that piece together for me when I said that one day. Because that's a sad. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. And so for us to be able to communicate it that way with our partner, like my body is feeling sad in this season.
Yeah.
Because
which you're not
tired.
opting for. You're not trying to feel tired. You're not trying for your body to feel sad. It just does. And again, that's back to the whole curiosity, back to the whole gentleness for yourself, but also for Wes to go, oh, her body's sad. Yeah. Oh, okay. How do we figure this out? And again, it's not, you're not going to get rid of your kids for 3 years. And so what are you going to do? How are you going to learn to dance through this? One of the things I did want to mention, because I think it's so significant, I think it can be either party, however it plays out, but we'll just say for the man to wound his partner multiple times during the day.
Yeah.
So, and this sounds horribly graphic and dramatic, but so throughout the course of the day, 3 times I punch Phyllis in the face. 1 time I stomp on her foot. Another time I stab her in the arm with an ice pick. And then, 7 o'clock at night, I'm like, hey, babe, you want to have some fun sexual time? She's still got an ice pick hanging out of her arm. She has a black eye. She's wounded. Yeah. She's damaged. I'm like, babe, that was like 4 hours ago that happened.
You need to differentiate why. Because your brain doesn't distinguish between. So when he's sharing this example, if you're new to the connection codes, when he's saying he's punching her in the face, I live life with them well enough to know Phyllis has never walked in my door with any bruises on her body. Our brain does not distinguish physical pain from emotional pain. So if Glenn walks in the door and he snaps at Phyllis because dinner is not on the table at that time, now he punched her. He might as well have punched her in the face. And so that is what he's referring to. So if we are doing those types of woundings to each other throughout the day, snapping at each other, teasing each other in a way like we think teasing is funny, but it actually creates a lot of pain at times.
It's very dangerous.
It's
dangerous.
Danger's
not wrong. Danger just is. You have to be aware that, And this morning I said something, I don't remember what it was, but you had said something, and I said something like, I can't even say that on air, but
you remembered what you said and you can't repeat it.
Yes. But she's like, I can do that with you. And I was like, okay, fine. So it's very dangerous. We have to be careful with, and we're sarcastic experts. We use sarcasm. We're facetious with each other. But you have to understand that's dangerous, and you do have to be careful. And I have had to learn, especially over the last several years, as I've learned this one more, to be ready to go, ooh, I think I missed on that. Because I thought I was being hilarious, because I'm very funny. And it didn't land that way with her. Yeah. It was actually painful. I thought it was going to be a joy point. She was just going to laugh about it. No, somehow I just missed. I missed in the presentation. It's not because I'm evil. It's not because I'm bad. It's not because I'm trying to harm her. I just missed. I was sarcastic. I was facetious, and it didn't work. Okay, fine. So, and we process through that literally in 8 seconds, 10 seconds.
Right.
So that makes a big difference. So back to that thing, just that the brain doesn't distinguish physical pain from emotional pain, except emotional pain is often worse. Not that I'm 100% totally against any domestic violence at all. I want to make that abundantly clear. But if I punched her in the face at 10 a.m., by 5 p.m., it's pretty much over, especially for me. I'm not that strong. So it would hardly do much damage at all. If I wound her emotionally, that may stay with her for the next 3 years or 10 years, who knows? And again, 100% against it. But if I hit her, if I stab her in the arm with an ice pick, that's going to heal pretty quickly. Emotional wounds can last for a very long time. So if I'm doing all this wounding with her throughout the course of the day, and then I'm like, why aren't you responding to me sexually? It's because she's been stabbed in the arm, stomped on the foot over and over again through the day. Of course she's not going to respond sexually. And for so many, again, it can be either party, but for so many men, they're just like, oh, she's just cold, she's frigid, no, she's wounded. That's the reason she doesn't respond to you sexually.
And I want to add to that, because I've spent some time thinking about this previously, the difference in the physical and emotional pain. When we hit each other, if it was a physical situation, you now are seeing the effects of that. You would notice, and you are much higher, likely to be hit with some level of guilt, whether you ever say it or process it or anything. But if you see that Phyllis is in physical pain and you caused it, it is a visual. But whenever you wound each other emotionally, you can't see it. And so therefore, there's never that opportunity until you become a safe person again for you to acknowledge that guilt, for you to acknowledge the miss even. And so it's a huge divider in our relationship, because you're right, we wound each other all the time. And then we expect each other to melt when we touch and want to connect sexually. And we become bodies. We become resistant. We become bitter at each other because there's so much emotional wounding. And both are disastrous. And I feel so much pain for people that are in any type of abusive relationship. People have asked us, what if it's physical abuse? It doesn't matter. Any type of abuse is abuse, and it is not okay.
And to, completely forgot what I was going to say, because what you were saying was so good. I'll think of it.
Okay. I know a minute ago we were just giving the example as though only women are emotionally wounded during the day. And just to be fair, that is not true.
Totally.
Men are equally wounded throughout the day and can be affected sexually and just shut down sexually because of that. And so it does go both ways. And sometimes it's not even I know we work with a lot of couples who've gone through having trouble getting pregnant, infertility. And we've never been down that road ourselves or even walked it through with any of our children or anything. So I can't imagine, but I hear stories, and I know that a lot of it is very then planned. It's a chart. It's, we have to have intercourse now kind of thing. And when you're going through that season, and then the pain of the I didn't get pregnant this month, or you do, but you lose that baby. That is that affects your sex life.
Oh my gosh.
On a huge level. There's so much emotion in all of that. And if you are listening and that is part of your story and you guys are just stuck, please reach out, because really do understand there is so many layers to that trauma that affects your then intimate connection after, down the road where, okay, you're no longer in that season, and now you just feel like you're lost from each other and you don't know how to reconnect, and it's so painful, and it just seems there's so much emotion, and that there is a lot of emotion to process through when you've experienced that as part of your story. And so I do want to acknowledge that it's not just one-sided. There's so many layers and can be.
I would say that falls into the trauma bucket. When we're talking about sexual connection, there's different types of trauma that people experience that wound their sexual connection, and that there's emotion wrapped up in. And so when there is trauma involved in your sexual relationship, it is best to reach out and get a support person, a therapist, a counselor that is a safe person for you to work through that.
I remember what I was going to say. That's the reason we emphasize the core emotion wheel, doing it endlessly, doing it countless numbers of times. So that afternoon, that evening, Phyllis can turn to me and go, babe, I felt wounded. I felt hurt. If I stomped on her foot, she rubs her foot. And then, I mean, not even on purpose, but the other day, I don't remember what we were doing, but I stepped on her foot and it hurt. I mean, it wasn't a huge deal, but it was painful in that moment. So she processes that very, very quickly. She said, ow. I'm like, oh, babe, I feel some guilt. I accidentally stepped on your foot. We process that in who knows what, 30 seconds, and she's fine. If we don't know how to do that with emotional pain, it just stays there. And emotional pain, again, can linger hours, days, weeks, months, years, literally years. And that's back around to what we were first talking about as far as the email. When there's emotional wounding, if people don't know what to do with that, and typically for the female, now she's stuck. And she is wounded, she's bleeding, she's in pain, and she's supposed to put out. And again, it's true for the male too, but that's a horrific scenario to be in. And that's the reason that we stress this so much over and over again. Do the foundations course first before you do late night. Do the wheel endlessly so that you know how to process this pain.
Yeah. And when we say put out, that's the facetious way to say, like, that is not our goal. We do not want a single person to feel like I got to put out. That's the opposite of what we are trying to achieve, which is why you phrased it the way that you did. Because when we start to feel like I've got to put out, that's your cue. There's wounding. There's something happening there that you need to get to the bottom of.
Absolutely.
And so we end each episode by doing our core emotion wheel. And this is the wheel that I would encourage each couple, especially leading into Valentine's, when you're trying to, there's all this emotion already wrapped up in your sexual connection, to do an issue-specific wheel about your sexual connection. And so we always show how to do that, and then there's an example in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Okay, you want to do, I'm throwing this at you here, it's a curveball.
Oh, good.
Can we do an issue-specific wheel about our sex date last night?
Okay,
Ooh,
you
wow.
go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
It just came over.
Okay, I'll let you go first on that one.
For me, of course, tons of joy. Oh my gosh, you're out of your freaking mind. You blow me away all the time. Doing anything with you is spectacular. Doing sexual stuff is there are no words, and having a sex date with you is slightly illegal.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. So much joy. I felt some fear, and I think I almost always do, just that it will go well, go smoothly, that it will even happen. You know, we're very busy people, and we have someone who lives with us who can interfere with our schedule from time to time. I felt a little bit of shame going into it just because our sex dates are so vulnerable or so just nth degree. And to know that I'm going to be not just accepted, but embraced and adored and celebrated, there's still at times some fear and fear of shame in that. Yeah. And I think usually I feel guilt just that I'm inconveniencing you. I'm taking up too much of your time. You're a very busy, powerful person. And oh my goodness, you didn't have time to spend all this time because we do bodacious sex dates. And so I feel guilt that I'm being too much. Then there's anger just to drive through that and do it anyway. And I've gotten better and better at that. Just I'm like, ugh, this is who we are. We are going to connect and have a fun, exciting time. But again, that fear crops up, and then I process the fear, and then the anger pushes me. Some loneliness at times. Again, just not knowing if I'm good enough for you, if I'm worth it to you, and don't always feel supported in that. Not because of you, I just go into it. I'm not sure. Sad about so many missed opportunities over the years. It just, again, sex dates with you are just, I don't know the words to put on it. And just sad that we missed so much. As part of what drives us to get this message out, because we deserved on our honeymoon. We deserved from the beginning. We deserved goodness all these many years, and we just missed. Hurt, let's see. Goodness, was there any? You don't always get all 8 core emotions with an issue specific. I don't think there was any hurt at all that I know of. Certainly hurt over the years, just that we've missed each other so much. But as far as I know, no hurt last night. It was just spectacular.
Okay, I'm gonna start with hurt because I was thinking not specifically last night, but just I know in 2023 we did not have a weekly sex date for 52 weeks in a row. Right. But the hurt for me in that is that I often, what I feel from you or it's communicated is that it's always my fault that we miss. And I feel hurt in that. I think that is lonely for me too. I know we had some good talks about it and I do feel seen, but I think that I dealt with a whole lot of physical pain last year, which you can't see from the outside, but that did affect my energy level. Right, yeah. And then I know there's times that your mom derails you on that particular day. And I think you want me to have the energy to counter that. And I know last year I didn't. So there's some lonely and hurt in that it does fall like you're always eager, but you're not always aware of all that I do and all that it requires to keep our life running. And so that's the hurt and lonely. I think the guilt and shame last night, you wrote an incredible fantasy script that I completely threw out the window and did my own.
Just don't expect an Academy Award.
So often I change it in midair, midstream, and of course we had a fabulous time. But then I do feel a little guilt and shame that I threw out all of your ideas. Let's see, anger. I think the driver, which is that this year to fight more for the consistency and to not be defeated by the outside things that push it. So I do have anger that's going to drive me in this year for that. Fear. I think there may be a little bit of fear that I completely changed the script and that you'll be, which you always assure me that you're not disappointed, but you don't forget either. So then you're like, bring it up the next week. Oh, last week you totally rewrote the script. And so there's always a little bit of fear that you're going to be disappointed and that it didn't meet the expectation, the height of where you were trying to get to. So even though you passed out, and so I know that you did pass out, and I tried to revive you to go further, and you were not having it. I did all that I could. Can I say that on air?
You can.
Okay. So that's on you, buddy.
Wow. Did you say joy? I don't even know.
Okay, joy. I may have not because I started with hurt. So joy, it was definitely a lot of fun. So yes.
That's so cool.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you all both so much for sharing for our audience. Some of you may be like, that's so bizarre that they're sharing so vulnerably, not only on air, but with someone else just like sitting there with them. And I'll say, hey, Summer, hey,
all of our kids,
all of the kids that are listening. But that's the point. That is the goal, that Dr. Glenn and Phyllis are trying to create a world where we're not stigmatizing sex, where we're not putting people in boxes, and where we can share in a way that's connecting and gives each other permission to show up with our partners in a beautiful and raw and vulnerable experience while having a really great time. Going through the late night course was the first time that I realized, oh, we can just do stuff like whatever we can. It's okay. And it was because the two of them shared so vulnerably. And I was lucky to be in the first course because they shared it all. It was good stuff. It would be like the R-rated version compared to where we are right
back
now.
In 2020.
Which is why we call it Late Night 101, because the dream is to create a Late Night 201.
Yeah.
And we got to ease the rest of y'all into this.
Right.
But I want our listeners to know that our desire is that you have the emotional connection that can support your sexual connection, so you can experience the marriage that you thought you were getting into, and that we feel was designed to bring connection and joy, not only inside our homes, but into the world. Because when we are showing up emotionally connected and sexually connected, that takes everything to a whole new level. And so I thank you so much. I hope that some of you listening felt inspired by that. They're like, they're scripting stuff. Should I script something? Like, this sounds like a great time. I hope you feel inspired. And if you have not already taken our Foundations or Late Night course, you're lucky because we have a bundle. You can get both of those. And we're 3 weeks before Valentine's Day right now. It is a great time to invest in that with your partner and to say, hey, baby, I got us a sex course for Valentine's Day.
And it will last long after the flowers, the roses fade, I agree.
Yeah. And if you know your partner is wanting the emotional connection, if you constantly hear that, you're like, I don't know how to do it. Hey, babe, I got us a course to become more emotionally connected with you. Wow. And so you can find that in our show notes. And thank you for being here. We do all of this because...
Yes, you need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.
Let's do this.